Have you ever started something with real excitement, only to watch it slowly fall apart? Maybe it was a dream, a business idea, a new skill, or even a completely different life you wanted to build. At first you believed it could work, but then setbacks appeared, progress slowed down, and doubt quietly began whispering, maybe this just isn't for you. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. Failure rarely destroys a dream. Quitting does. The world is full of talented people who stopped one step too early, not because they were incapable, but because repeated setbacks convinced them the fight wasn't worth it. But what if success doesn't belong to the smartest person, or the most talented one, but to the person who simply refuses to disappear? In this story, you'll follow the journey of a struggling man whose life seemed trapped in endless failure. Every attempt collapsed, every opportunity vanished, until one quiet decision changed everything. And what happened next reveals a powerful law of life that most people completely overlook. Stay with me until the end, because this story might completely change the way you see failure, persistence, and your own future. You know how it goes. Someone starts a dream with fire in their chest and hope lighting the road ahead. At first, everything feels possible, almost inevitable. Plans are made, energy is high, and the future looks wide open. But life rarely walks in a straight line. Soon the first obstacle appears, then another, then one more, just for good measure. A plan that seemed solid suddenly collapses. Effort doesn't produce the results that were promised. What once felt exciting slowly begins to feel heavy, and somewhere along the way, enthusiasm starts slipping through the cracks. The strange thing is that most dreams don't die in one dramatic moment. They fade quietly, little by little. A person tries, fails, adjusts, tries again, and fails again. At first they brush it off, telling themselves it's just part of the process. But after enough setbacks, even the strongest belief begins to tremble. You've probably seen it happen to someone close. Maybe a friend who once talked endlessly about a big idea. Maybe a relative who swore they'd build a different life someday. For a while they fought hard for it. Then slowly, they stopped talking about it altogether. Failure has a peculiar way of whispering dangerous thoughts. It doesn't shout, it nudges. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe other people are just luckier. Maybe you should be realistic. And once those thoughts take root, something inside a person shifts. Dreams that once felt urgent begin to feel foolish. Hope starts sounding naive. And persistence begins to feel like stubbornness. That's when quitting starts to look strangely reasonable. The world is full of unfinished dreams buried under that quiet surrender. Not because people lacked intelligence, not because they lacked effort, but because repeated disappointment slowly drained the courage to continue. And over time, giving up began to feel like the safer choice. But somewhere out there in the middle of that very struggle, there was one man standing face to face with this exact battle. A man who had already tasted more failure than most people could tolerate. A man whose life seemed to collapse every time he tried to rise. And his story, it was only just beginning. Somewhere in a quiet corner of the city lived a man who knew struggle far too well. Not the kind you hear about in dramatic stories, but the slow, grinding kind that wears a person down over time. Bills always seemed to arrive faster than his paychecks. Opportunities appeared, only to disappear just as quickly. And each morning he woke up carrying the quiet weight of unfinished hopes. He worked harder than most people around him. Long hours, tired hands, late nights trying to figure things out. He wasn't lazy, not even close. If effort alone created success, his life would have been completely different. But somehow, every road he tried seemed to lead right back to the same place. A few years earlier, he had believed things would change. He started small projects, chased opportunities, tried learning new skills. Each attempt began with optimism and determination. For a while, things even looked promising. Then something always happened that pulled the ground from beneath his feet. Sometimes it was money running out before results appeared. Other times it was people who lost faith and walked away. And occasionally, it was simply bad timing that crushed months of effort. Every failure left behind the same heavy feeling. The feeling that maybe he was always one step behind life. Still, he kept trying, at least for a while. Because deep down he carried a stubborn belief that his life could be different. He imagined a future where he wasn't constantly worrying about survival, where he could breathe, build something meaningful, and finally move forward. But belief gets harder to protect when reality keeps pushing back. People around him started offering quiet advice. Maybe you should settle for stability. Maybe those dreams are too risky. Maybe you should just focus on getting by. Little by little, those voices started sounding more reasonable. Even he began wondering if they were right. Maybe some people were simply meant to struggle their whole lives. Maybe success belonged to people with better luck, better timing, better connections. And maybe his role in the world was just to keep working and hoping for small breaks. It was a thought he hated, but it visited him more often than he liked to admit. Yet something about his story still felt unfinished. Because behind the exhaustion, behind the disappointment, there was a tension building quietly inside him. A feeling that the real battle hadn't even revealed itself yet. And soon, that tension would begin to show in ways he couldn't ignore. Days began blending together in a rhythm that felt impossible to escape. Morning arrived. Work demanded his energy. Evening brought exhaustion. And somewhere between those hours, the quiet question always returned. Is this really all my life will ever be? It lingered in the background like a song he couldn't turn off. From the outside, his life looked ordinary enough. He worked, paid what bills he could, and kept moving forward. But inside, something felt painfully stagnant. It was like running on a treadmill. Constant effort, zero distance gained. Every step forward seemed to cancel itself out by nightfall. Sometimes he would sit alone after a long day, staring at the ceiling. Not angry, not even emotional anymore. Just tired. Tired of trying, tired of hoping, tired of restarting from nothing. He'd replay his past attempts like scenes from an unfinished film, each one ending the same way. Promise followed by disappointment. What made it worse was watching life move for everyone else. Friends began buying homes, building businesses, starting families. They talked about plans for the future with calm confidence. Meanwhile, he still felt stuck trying to stabilize the present. Comparison quietly turned into another weight on his shoulders. The mind has a strange way of turning frustration into doubt. At first, he questioned the strategies he used. Then he questioned the opportunities he chose. Eventually, he started questioning himself. Maybe the problem wasn't circumstances at all. That thought crept into his mind more often than he wanted to admit. What if I'm simply not capable of more? It's a dangerous idea, the kind that shrinks ambition little by little. Because once a person believes their limits are permanent, they stop looking for doors that might still be open. Yet even in those quiet moments of doubt, something resisted inside him. A stubborn voice refused to disappear completely. It reminded him of the dreams he once carried so clearly. Dreams that felt distant now, but not entirely dead. And that quiet resistance would soon face its greatest test yet, because life was about to deliver a moment that would push him further than ever before. A moment sharp enough to force a decision he could no longer postpone. The kind of moment where a man either walks away from his dreams forever, or discovers something inside himself he never realized existed. And that moment was closer than he imagined. There comes a moment in many lives when quiet frustration finally reaches its limit. Not a loud explosion, not a dramatic collapse, just a slow buildup that can't hold any longer. For him, that moment arrived on an ordinary day that began like every other. The same routine, the same worries, the same fragile hope that maybe this time things would work. But by the end of that day, something inside him would crack. He had poured months into one more attempt to improve his situation. Late nights studying, small savings invested, careful planning step by step. For a while it felt different, like maybe this was the opportunity that would finally work. He allowed himself to imagine a future where the struggle eased just a little. Then reality delivered the familiar blow he knew all too well. The plan collapsed faster than he expected. A sudden problem, one outside his control, erased months of effort almost overnight. The money he had scraped together disappeared. The opportunity closed before it could truly begin. And once again, he found himself standing exactly where he had started. That evening he sat alone in silence, staring at the numbers that no longer made sense. Not angry this time, not even surprised. Just empty. The kind of silence that follows when hope grows tired of fighting. And for the first time, the idea of quitting didn't feel weak. It felt logical. Maybe everyone around him had been right all along. Maybe chasing something better was simply a waste of energy. Maybe acceptance was the smarter path. His mind began building arguments for surrender. No more disappointment. No more restarting from nothing. No more exhausting battles against circumstances that never seemed to change. It sounded almost peaceful, but somewhere beneath that exhaustion, Another thought began to surface, a quieter one, but stubborn. If he quit now, he would never truly know what might have happened if he kept going, and that small, uncomfortable question refused to leave him alone. He sat there longer than usual that night, caught between two futures, one where he finally gave up and accepted the limits life seemed to offer him, and another where he continued the fight, even if failure came again. The decision forming in his mind would shape everything that followed, and the strange part, it didn't arrive with anger or desperation, but with calm clarity. That night stretched longer than most. The room was quiet, but his mind was anything but. Thoughts moved back and forth like waves against a stubborn shore. Part of him wanted rest from the endless struggle. Another part refused to accept that this was the end of his story. He replayed the years behind him, almost like flipping through an old journal. Every attempt, every setback, every moment where things nearly worked. At first, it all looked like a long list of failures, but the more he stared at it, the more something curious appeared. Despite everything, he had never truly stopped trying. That realization felt small at first, almost insignificant, yet it carried a strange kind of power. Most people would have given up long ago under the same pressure. Still, somehow, he had always found a way to begin again. Maybe that stubbornness meant something after all. Then a simple thought crossed his mind, one that changed the way he saw his struggle. What if failure wasn't the real problem? What if the real danger was stopping completely? Because the moment a person quits, the story ends right there. No more attempts, no more chances, no more surprises waiting ahead. He leaned back in his chair and let that idea settle. Maybe success didn't belong to the most talented people. Maybe it didn't belong to the luckiest either. Maybe it quietly belonged to the people who simply stayed in the game longer than everyone else. The ones who refused to disappear after a few defeats. That thought didn't magically solve his problems. The bills were still real, the disappointments still fresh, the road ahead still uncertain, but something inside him shifted ever so slightly. Instead of asking, "What if I fail again?" he started asking a different question. What happens if I refuse to quit no matter what? Not reckless persistence, but steady determination. The kind that measures progress by effort, not immediate reward. So right there, in that quiet room, he made a simple decision. Not loud, not dramatic, not something anyone else would notice. He would keep moving forward, even if progress was painfully slow, even if failure appeared again and again along the road. And that quiet decision would soon lead him to a discovery he had never considered before. Many of the stories you hear here aren't just stories. They reflect the invisible weight you may be carrying every day. If you're tired of holding pain, responsibility, and guilt that were never yours, I created an ebook called The Weight of Stones That Are Not Yours and More Too bonus for you. It's for those who want to let go, set boundaries, and live with more lightness. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. A few days after that quiet decision, something unexpected crossed his path. Not a miracle, not a sudden opportunity, just a small moment most people would overlook. He stumbled across a story while reading late one evening. A story about someone who had failed far more times than he had. Yet somehow, that person eventually succeeded in ways few could imagine. At first he read it with mild curiosity, but the deeper he went, the more something inside him stirred. This wasn't a tale of smooth progress or natural talent. It was a history of repeated rejection, closed doors, and humiliating setbacks. The kind of journey most people would have abandoned halfway through. But one detail refused to leave his mind. The person in the story hadn't succeeded because they avoided failure. They succeeded because they simply refused to disappear after it. Every rejection became another attempt. Every loss became another lesson. That idea lingered in his thoughts for days. It began to reshape how he interpreted his own past. Maybe those failed attempts weren't proof that he was incapable. Maybe they were simply unfinished steps in a longer process. Steps that only looked pointless because he stopped too soon. Around that time, he also met an older man at work who seemed unusually calm about life, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. One afternoon, during a casual conversation, the man said something simple. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they leave the field too early. The words sounded almost obvious yet strangely powerful. The older man explained that success often hides behind persistence, not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but the quiet kind that keeps showing up long after excitement fades, the kind that survives boredom, frustration, and slow progress. He began paying closer attention to that idea. Successful people didn't seem immune to failure at all. In fact, many of them had far more failures than the average person. The difference was simple but uncomfortable. They stayed in the fight long enough for results to finally appear. For the first time, his past failures looked different, not like a graveyard of broken attempts, but like a training ground he had misunderstood, a place where persistence was slowly being built without him realizing it, and that realization would soon lead him to create a completely new way of moving forward. After those conversations and quiet reflections, something in his thinking began to reorganize. For years, he had judged every effort by the same harsh question: did this work, or did it fail? If the result wasn't immediate, he labeled it a mistake, and slowly that habit had drained his motivation. But now he started experimenting with a different way of measuring progress. Instead of asking whether something worked instantly, he asked something simpler. Did I move forward today? Even the smallest step began to matter. A new skill practiced, a lesson learned, a mistake understood. It didn't sound revolutionary at first, but this shift changed the entire atmosphere of his efforts. Progress was no longer a distant finish line. It became something that could happen every single day, even on days when things didn't go as planned. He also built a simple rule for himself. No dramatic restarts, no waiting for perfect conditions. Just consistent action, however small it seemed. Read 10 pages, practice one new technique, send one message, learn one lesson. Tiny steps, repeated with stubborn patience. On difficult days, he reminded himself of a simple truth. Quitting is usually emotional, not logical. It arrives when frustration feels louder than purpose. So instead of making decisions in moments of discouragement, he made a promise to continue until the emotion passed. This approach created something he had never experienced before: stability. Not financial stability yet, not success in the traditional sense, but mental stability. The chaos of constant restarting began to fade, and in its place appeared a steady rhythm of effort. Something interesting also happened to his confidence. Before, he waited for results to believe in himself. Now, confidence slowly grew from his consistency. Each day he kept going became proof that he could endure difficulty. And endurance, he realized, was a powerful advantage. The road ahead still looked long and uncertain. There were no guarantees waiting for him, but for the first time, he had a system strong enough to survive failure. A mindset that didn't collapse every time things went wrong. And soon that mindset would face its first real test. Because persistence sounds inspiring in theory, but when real obstacles return, when progress feels invisible, when discouragement whispers once again, that's when a person discovers whether their resolve is truly real. And those difficult days were already approaching. Of course, the real test didn't take long to arrive. It rarely does when someone decides to change their life. The excitement of a new mindset faded after a few days, and reality returned with its usual collection of obstacles. Work was still exhausting, problems still appeared, and progress still felt slow. Some mornings he woke up with that familiar weight on his chest. The old voice tried to sneak back into his thoughts. See? Nothing's really changing. Maybe all this persistence talk is just another illusion. Those doubts hadn't disappeared. They were simply waiting for the right moment. But this time, something was different in how he responded. Instead of treating doubt like a final verdict, he began treating it like background noise. Annoying, distracting, but not powerful enough to stop him. So he continued his small daily actions anyway. There were days when effort produced absolutely nothing. No opportunity, no improvement, not even encouragement. Just quiet, stubborn work that seemed invisible to everyone else. In the past, those days would have crushed his motivation. Now he simply recorded them as part of the process. He started keeping a small notebook. Nothing fancy, just a place to track what he learned each day. Sometimes the entry was simple. Tried something new, didn't work, learned why. And strangely enough, that began to feel like progress. Of course, temptation still appeared from time to time. Quitting remained the easiest option on the table. One decision could end the struggle instantly. No more risk, no more disappointment, just the quiet comfort of giving up. But he remembered the promise he made to himself, not to chase quick victories, but to refuse surrender. So on the hardest days, he simplified everything. If nothing else, he would take one small step forward, just enough to prove the journey hadn't stopped. And slowly, almost invisibly, something began to change. not in his circumstances yet, but in him. Challenges that once felt overwhelming now felt manageable. Each difficult day became a small training session for resilience, and without realizing it, he was getting stronger. Still, the outside world hadn't rewarded his persistence yet. From the surface, his life looked almost the same as before, which made the next phase even more important, because persistence only reveals its power over time, and that time was finally beginning to arrive. At first, the changes in his life were almost invisible. No sudden breakthrough, no dramatic transformation, just small shifts in how he approached each day. Where frustration once stopped him, persistence quietly pushed him forward, and though progress was slow, it was finally real. He began noticing little victories that once went unnoticed, a skill that took less time to understand, a problem he solved faster than before, a conversation that opened a small opportunity, tiny signals that effort was slowly beginning to compound. It reminded him of planting seeds in dry soil. For a long time, nothing seems to happen above the ground, but beneath the surface, something is quietly taking shape. Roots begin spreading where no one can see them, and those hidden roots eventually support visible growth. The same thing was happening inside him. Each obstacle was no longer just a problem to survive. It became a lesson he could carry into the next attempt. Instead of repeating the same mistakes, he started adjusting faster. And that ability slowly turned setbacks into stepping stones. People around him didn't notice the change immediately. From the outside, his life still looked ordinary. He still worked hard, still faced difficulties, still had uncertain days. But internally, something had shifted in a powerful way. He no longer felt trapped by every failure. More importantly, he began trusting the process. Not blindly, but patiently. He understood that meaningful results rarely appear overnight. Like building strength in the body, persistence required time, and time was finally working on his side. Every week, the improvements became slightly clearer, a little more confidence in his decisions, a little more clarity about which paths actually worked, a little more resilience when things didn't go as planned. The man who once felt defeated was slowly becoming tougher, and though he couldn't fully see it yet, the momentum was building. All those small actions were quietly stacking together. Lessons, habits, discipline, patience, each one reinforcing the next. Sooner or later, that accumulation would create a moment impossible to ignore, a moment where persistence would finally reveal its power. For a long time, his efforts felt like quiet preparation, work happening behind the scenes where no one could see it. But persistence has a strange habit of eventually revealing itself. One day, almost unexpectedly, something different began to happen. A door that had always stayed closed finally moved, just a little. It started with a small opportunity, nothing extraordinary at first glance, the kind of chance he might have ignored months earlier. But this time he approached it differently. With patience, with skill he had slowly built, with calm determination. And for once, things didn't fall apart halfway through. The work he had practiced quietly began showing its value. Problems that once overwhelmed him now looked manageable. Decisions that once confused him became clearer. He moved with more confidence, less hesitation, and people around him started noticing the difference. One conversation led to another. One small success created another opportunity. Nothing explosive, nothing dramatic, just a series of events slowly leaning in his favor, like gears finally beginning to turn after years of resistance. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of validation. Not arrogance, not celebration, just relief. Proof that persistence wasn't a foolish gamble after all. Proof that all those invisible efforts had been building something real, something that finally began showing itself in the world. He still remembered the nights he almost quit, the moments when surrender seemed logical and safe. Had he walked away then, none of this would have existed. The opportunity, the progress, the new sense of possibility, all of it would have remained hidden behind that one decision to give up. That realization changed how he saw his journey. Success hadn't arrived suddenly out of nowhere. It had been quietly approaching the entire time, waiting patiently behind months of persistence and growth, waiting for the moment he became ready to meet it. And though this breakthrough was meaningful, it was only the beginning. Because what he had gained was more than a single opportunity. He had built resilience, discipline, and belief in his ability to endure, qualities far more powerful than one lucky break. And those qualities were about to reshape his entire life. Time passed, and something remarkable began unfolding in his life. Not overnight, not with fireworks, but with steady, undeniable change. The man who once doubted every step now moved with quiet confidence. Challenges still appeared, but they no longer felt like dead ends. They looked more like problems waiting for patient solutions. His work began attracting better opportunities. People noticed his reliability, his persistence, his calm under pressure. Where others quit halfway, he kept moving forward. And slowly, those qualities started opening doors that once seemed unreachable. Doors he might never have even noticed before. Financial pressure didn't vanish instantly, but it began easing. Each step forward created a little more stability than the last. Projects grew larger, decisions grew smarter, results grew stronger. The same man who once struggled just to stay afloat was gradually building something solid beneath his feet. But the greatest transformation wasn't external. It happened inside him. The fear of failure that once paralyzed him had lost its power. He understood now that failure was simply part of movement, and movement was the one thing he refused to abandon. His mindset became his strongest asset. Where others saw obstacles, he saw lessons waiting to be learned. Where others hesitated, he acted with patience and discipline. Persistence had reshaped how he viewed the world, and the world began responding differently because of it. People sometimes asked him how his life finally changed. They expected to hear about a secret opportunity or lucky break, but he always knew the truth was far simpler than that. His life didn't change the moment success appeared. It changed the moment he refused to quit. That decision, quiet and almost invisible at the time, had slowly redirected the entire course of his future. Every day he continued moving forward, strengthened that decision. Every setback he endured made his foundation stronger. And eventually, persistence turned struggle into momentum. Yet his story wasn't just about personal success, because the deeper lesson behind his transformation was something far more universal than one man's journey. A principle hidden in plain sight, waiting for anyone willing to see it. And that lesson would soon become clear. Stories like his often look different when you see them from the outside. People notice the progress, the stability, the opportunities that appeared later. They assume something extraordinary must have happened along the way. But the truth is usually far less dramatic. Most transformations are built quietly, one persistent step at a time. What separated him from countless others wasn't talent or luck. It was a decision that almost nobody notices in the moment. The decision to stay in the fight just a little longer, to try again when disappointment suggested stopping, to keep moving even when results were slow and invisible. Think about how often people abandon something too early. A new skill, a business idea, a personal goal. The first obstacles appear, motivation fades, and the effort disappears. Not because success was impossible, but because persistence ran out before the opportunity arrived. Success has a strange timing that many people misunderstand. It rarely appears during the early excitement of a new beginning. More often, it hides behind the phase where most people give up. That quiet stretch where effort feels unrewarded, where only the stubborn continue moving forward. That's the moment where persistence quietly changes everything. Not with dramatic breakthroughs, but with accumulation. Each attempt teaches something new. Each obstacle sharpens the mind. Each failure removes another weakness from the process. Anyone watching his story might recognize parts of their own life in it. Moments where quitting felt logical. Moments where doubt grew louder than hope. Moments where the easier path was simply walking away. Those moments appear in almost every meaningful journey. So the real question isn't whether challenges will appear. They always do. The real question is how long a person is willing to stay in the process. Because often the difference between defeat and success is simply the decision to keep going one more time. And once someone truly understands that principle, their entire relationship with failure begins to change. Setbacks stop looking like final endings. They start looking like temporary chapters in a much longer story. A story that persistence is still quietly writing.